Are you gonna, can I be pinned into the corner? Because like I've lost all sound into the room.
That company is all
There.
really good stuff. So she'll be out doing some really cool high level stuff.
She just called in this afternoon. She lost her AirPods. She's like,
Hello, Letitia. How are you doing?
Hi, can everybody hear me okay? That is online.
opportunity.
Doing good.
Another day with those.
Hi, Joe.
So you've heard of the
Hi, Letitia. Hi, Ken.
rehabbing,
Hi.
cyber, so forth. Company
All right.
working for, I got into the IHAC building for.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to, can you believe it, week 4 of our business plan boot camp. I'm so excited that you guys have all stuck with it. I hope that people are starting to either look at their business plan, make some tweaks to it, or start writing it. Right, Letitia?
Yes.
Since you're going to do that.
Yes.
Oh, great. So that's great. So today, for week 4, we are actually going to be talking about pricing and revenue forecasting. It's going to be a great interactive time that we have, and I'm so excited that Dr. Joe Kashinikoff is with us today. He is an associate professor of finance and economics at Gannon University. Plus, we are so lucky to have him at Gannon because he also uses our ETI clients as real-world experience for his students in his MBA classes. So right now we have done 5 companies since Brad and I have been there. So for the spring and fall of 2020, he has used 5 of our companies, and we are set to use 6 more for the spring semester. So super excited for that. In fact, 3 of them are in this room right now. So super excited. We are going to be doing some breakout sessions. So I know that we're going to have Jeremiah be one group and G be another group. We're going to split up here, and then Letitia and Ken, since you guys are virtual, you'll be a group amongst yourselves, and then I will press pause on the recording, hopefully, and then mute you guys so you guys can talk amongst yourselves. I hope that works out. A couple housekeeping things before we get started, if you don't mind. I have some papers on your table for your binder. So I found some awesome things from our Tom Laird conversation that we had right before break. Top social media platforms cheat sheet. I thought that was super cool. So everyone has a copy of that for their book. I also have a social media platforms chapter from a book that really has a lot of helpful hints on how to use social media to boost your company, once you get there, and things to do. For week 4, which is our week, I found a couple of things about forecasting sales for startup business articles, as well as a template. So just some referrals, and then, because I forgot last time, our little blue sheet for our survey on our speaker series. So without further ado, Dr. Kashinikoff, it is to you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Just one question for you, and Kathy, thank you so much. Can I be pinned into the corner of my presentation, or that's not possible?
I tried to do that, and is it because you're a co-host?
I don't know.
Do I spotlight for you? Is that it? What happens if I spotlight? No.
It says the host has spotlighted your video for everyone.
Well, that's not what I want.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to do it from your end, Joe, because you're co-host?
What do I want to press?
You go to participants down at the bottom, and then if you highlight you and go to more, I usually see a pin, and I don't see that.
I just have a rename.
Let me see view. You know what about gallery? How about that?
Even in a boots. He's only 9 though, but he thinks he's so cool.
All right, I got you now. Here we go. I think you're pinned. Letitia and Ken, can you see Dr. Kashinikoff? Because we can't on the screen. Well, you know what? Everyone has a picture of you in their binder.
Okay. Yes. The one that looks like Robert Downey Jr. That's me.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So if you ever need to put a picture of me anywhere and you can't get one, just get Robert Downey Jr. Put it in there. The Iron Man look, that whole look.
That is Jim.
Okay, but here, let me go ahead and get, whoa. Okay, let me get started here. I'm gonna just set, I have the things on my screen that's sort of taking up the middle. Okay, I'm gonna close it. Okay, everybody can hear me okay? Just go ahead and, Kathy, if you could do me one favor, and
Yes,
that is
sir.
before we get started, tell me who's in the room so that I know who I have the privilege of talking to tonight. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to make a couple notes to myself here.
Sure.
Exactly, I got in the room. So, give me a second.
So right now online,
Yes.
we have Ken. Hi, Ken. And we have Letitia. Hi, Letitia. They are online.
Okay.
And then in the room, we have Jeremiah Brennan, whom you know from Centric Technologies.
How you doing,
Oh,
Joe?
yeah, he's awesome. Yep.
Yep. Well, everybody in the room and online is awesome, Joe. We have G Page, who you had for one of your classes.
Yes.
He is from
Excellent.
Seed. We're going to talk
Yeah.
to him on Friday. We
Yes.
have Diana Martin, who is looking at starting not only a salon, but a nail salon, but also doing her own nail polish line, which I cannot wait. Please.
Okay.
Please. We have Sarah Hanks, who we will be talking to on Friday with Leverage for Data. And we have Christy Gnibis, who is, I can't wait for this as well, is looking at doing some type of a location where she is selling bottled breweries from the local breweries in town. So in our neck of the woods. So super excited, as well as Brad and myself. So that is everybody that is online right now.
Okay. Okay. And let's see. So welcome everybody. Can you hear me okay? Everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I wish you could see me, but if that's okay. Letitia, I see you. I'm going to be lecturing to you or talking to you. So it's one of those things. I have an audience of one. Everybody else gets to listen in. This is absolutely cool. But absolutely, I'm really honored and excited to be with you tonight. And we want to take a look at Business Plan Bootcamp, the pricing and revenue projections. In effect, what we're doing is we're going to look at how do I set prices for my company. And I'll tell you, that is a real challenge for companies. And I'm going hoarse for just a second. I can't go hoarse this early. It's a real challenge for companies to look at pricing, because what they say is, how do I know how many customers I'm going to have? How do I know what the product's going to cost? How do I know these things? So what they're saying is, I don't know how to set prices. In fact, when I teach, like GMBA 799, and Jeremiah, you were an awesome client there. In the prior years, teaching other clients, working with other clients, Mocha Wallet, and just working with Ty Michna, different clients. So exciting, Kathy. Thank you for everything you do. You're there. But what happens often is that students, when I say, well, help the client set prices, they say, well, let's take a look at marketing. And I said, so, okay, let's talk about pricing. And they say, what we really need to do is talk about what we're going to be selling inventory. And what they're in effect doing is steering around the price setting. They're like, it's a daunting thing that they don't want to touch, because in effect, it's a commitment, and oftentimes what the customer sees. So what I want to do tonight is work with you and help you understand how to set a price and how to project revenues. And in doing that, we're going to find out there's multiple ways to do that. And I'm going to show you how to decide which way. I'm going to go forward here with a slide. And as I go forward with a slide, let's see if I can do this here. We are a little bit like this. If you remember this from Dr. Emmett Brown, he is from the movie Back to the Future. He's standing there with jumper cables. In effect, he's saying this. He's asking two questions. The two questions he asked is where, in effect, you're going to ask, where do I set the prices and how much revenue will we have? Two questions. Then you go out and set a price, and this happens. All of a sudden, we're like, what in the world is the company? We look at our financials, we say, the look you have, when you look at your financials for the first time, and you say, your financials are prepared, and you go, man, that is whether or not my company is going to survive. And how many of you are like, if we prepared financials right now, you'd be like, there's nothing at the revenue level, but there's all this cost. And you'd have that look on, you know, you're the man, Dr. Emmett Brown in the first picture, you have such hope and expectation of what's going to happen inside your company. And then how many of you have already arrived at the second picture going, what, yeah. How are we going to do this? I wish I could see. I wish I could.
We're laughing, Joe.
Yeah, because you've been there. You know, we work with clients and you've been there. But where I want to take you tonight is through multiple things. I want to look at what is known as a pricing strategy. In other words, we're going to go through and say, okay, what is a pricing strategy and what is a pricing model? There's terms that are tossed around out there. Pricing strategies, pricing models. I'm going to show you those. I'm going to do a little bit of a deep dive into those, show you different ones and why you would pick each one. What you will find is that in one industry, people can be using different strategies and different models. We're going to actually see that happen tonight. Then I'm going to take you through the 6 steps of choosing the right pricing strategy for your company. I want to help you so that you're looking at your company and saying, this is what I'm thinking. Where do I set my strategy based on what I'm thinking? Okay. Now, keep in mind, I'm going to build into this. Setting strategy and setting the model take both internal and external views of the company. Internal and external. We're going to look at those tonight. We're going to understand the difference between costs and break even. Some of you, it's going to be, we've known this, but it's a little bit of a review. Some, it's going to be for the first time. 7 pricing strategies you should know. Okay, right now, tell you why. If you're thinking about strategies, you should say this. I need to be able to not only set my own, but I need to be able to get inside the head of my competition and inside the head of my customer so that I can be savvy in what I'm setting. If you can get inside the head of your competition, you can predict their next move. If you can get inside the head of your customer, you can understand what they're able to handle. We're going to go there tonight. 5 types of pricing models: projecting total income, tracking company performance. I'm going to take a quick look at what we're doing in data analytics, GMBA 625, with creation of dashboards. And then we're going to wrap tonight up by looking at what's known as the hockey stick. In other words, many of you who are in the room tonight are at the point where you're saying that we're looking at, I know Brad, you and I were just having a conversation a little bit earlier. I know Jeremiah, you and Nelson are looking at this and this is going to be coming in your near future. G, with what you're doing with the seed, that too, you're going to be looking for funding rounds. And what do venture capitalists, what do funding agencies look at? And I'm going to look at the hockey stick, and we're going to wrap the evening up there. So let me ask this question before we go any further. Can everyone hear me okay? And are we all right?
Yeah, we hear you fine on
Yes.
our end.
Yes.
I can hear you.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Okay. So first thing I want to do is look at two items here. I want to differentiate in your mind, help you understand what is the difference between a pricing strategy and a pricing model. Okay. So what is the information? What is the difference? And I'm going to start right here and say this, that a pricing strategy and model, the relationship between the two is the model is how you implement the strategy. So let's take a look here. With the strategy first, okay? Your strategy is going to be primarily, your pricing strategy is primarily set by things that are happening outside of your company. The market, market share, things like that. Things that, what is your competition doing? Who are your customers? Right now with COVID, are they able to go to stores? Things like that. That's external. Your pricing strategy is being set by external factors. Then it's determined by target market and your position. And this is a key point. Your pricing strategy is driven by the psychological reaction consumers are predicted to have toward your prices. In other words, here's the danger. Oftentimes, companies come up with a price by doing internal calculations, but never stop and say, can the consumer accept it? Will the consumer accept it? Where is that point that the consumer, what will they bear? Then, once we have those, we come up with the pricing model. A pricing model saying, okay, now I know that. It's primarily driven by internal factors, things happening inside your company, your growth rate, how many employees you want to have, what are your costs, what do you want to do, and things like that. It's determined by your product service and your cost structure. So let me do this, and I'm going to draw on Kathy. Kathy, if you could do this for me. Any questions that arise at this point?
Anybody have any questions for Joe, either in the room or online? Are we good? And Joe, at the conclusion, will email me the PowerPoint that we're using tonight, and then I'll send that out to everyone. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. Okay.
I don't think we have any questions right now, so you're good to continue.
Okay. Now, so the 6 steps in choosing the right strategy. Now, so in effect, what you're doing is starting inside and then moving outside. Starting inside, moving outside. First thing you're always going to want to do, and this is key, and Brad, I know you're awesome on doing this, and Kathy, you're awesome in helping in doing this too, is helping companies set their business goals. So the question is, what exactly do you want to accomplish? So decide what you want, your market share, you reach your new segment, increase your revenue. What are your goals of your company? Then we determine the costs. We're going to take a look at this in a minute here. I'm going to do a little bit of a dive into this of determining costs and saying what are the costs of your materials, labor, overhead, and determine how much you're going to do break even. I'll show you how to calculate break even, just a little bit of a review. And then decide on profit, figure out how much profit you want to make. Once I have that information gathered, Then I moved to considering the external environment. And then I look at my competition. I love a story that one of my good friends is Keith McGarvey. Keith McGarvey was, and you're going to see this come up later on in his example. Keith McGarvey told me this. He says, one of the key things in business is going to school on your competition. He owned Country Fair. Country Fair used to be owned by Meadowbrook Dairy. So his family, the McGarveys, owned Country Fair. He built it as he was CEO. He built it from 35 to 85 stores in 5 years, an incredible growth rate. In doing that, he realized his biggest competition was Sheetz. And you see that they're in town now. But he did this. Sheetz is a privately held company. In other words, they don't publish their financial, you're going to go out there and say, I'm going to go over and I'm going to get Sheetz public records. I'm going to get their financial statement, income statement, stuff like that. Sheetz doesn't publish them. So you're going to say that, well, then how did he do this? What he said to me was this. I went to school on Sheetz. Sheetz and I are in the same market. We both sell gasoline. We're both convenience stores. I went to school on them. I studied their locations. I knew how they made decisions. I knew what they needed as a traffic flow. I knew how close the intersection needed to be. I knew how many pumps they have. I have pumps. This is Keith McGarvey talking. He runs Country Fair. I have pumps. They have pumps. I know how many customers go through a gas station. I know how many pumps. I know that stuff. He rebuilt Sheetz financial statements on his own. He knew how much gas cost. He knew how much milk cost. He knew how much bread cost. He knew how much employees cost. He knew all that information. You're saying, well, I can't get the financial statements. He built them. So what he ended up doing was this. He says, okay, they want into Erie. And if you remember, how many people, maybe some of you are Erie residents, lifelong residents. For the longest time, Sheetz was not in Erie. They wanted Erie. Country Fair's not headquarters, but basically focus was Erie. What Keith McGarvey did was this. He studied their model. He studied how they make a decision of where they're going to put a gas station. He went to the real estate and he said, how many locations are there like that in Erie? He found out there are 5 locations in that like that in Erie. He bought all 5. Sheetz came to town. Sheetz came to town and they said, we want that location. And the real estate said, it's not for sale. We can talk to the guy who owns it. He goes, who owns it? Keith McGarvey, president of Country Fair. So they go, okay, no, we're going to go to a next location. We want that location. And they said, it's not for sale. Keith McGarvey owns it. All 5 locations. None of the locations that matched Country Sheetz formula were available because Keith McGarvey owns all 5 of them. He did not build country fairs on them. He didn't need to build country fairs. He had his country fairs already built in here. But he held them as empty lots and he just smiled at Sheetz and goes, no, you don't. Because it didn't meet that formula.
Wow.
So you go to school on your competition. Anybody that you're looking at going into a field and there's people in that field already, think about this. You have a very similar cost structure to them. You can recreate their record. You could go to school on them. He would look and say, I could tell you exactly how much money every one of their locations makes because he knew how many pumps they had. He knew the traffic flow that was in front of the store and he knew. So he analyzed the competition. He also knew the customer because if in Erie or whatever he's going to do, it's the same customer. How many people have ever filled gas at Country Fair and how many people have filled gas at Sheets. You're the customer. It's the same customer that walks into a Sheets that walks into a country fair. You're going to think about this. If you're selling a product, the customer that they have and you have oftentimes is the same person. You have this information, and then ultimately you come up with a strategy. Let's talk a little. Oh, everybody okay there? Kathy, all cool?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, moving forward. Now, let's talk costs a little bit. When we talk about costs, if I did a 10,000 foot view over top of a factory, imagine this is a factory and it's a rectangle footprint, literal footprint. There are 3 areas in that footprint. So I'm going a little bit concrete here, but if you're in a service organization, you also have a lot of these costs. There are what are known as factory, direct costs, materials, labor, factory overhead, indirect costs. These are known as product costs. What I mean by product costs is this. Follow my logic on this here for a minute. On your product cost, you have let me back up and say this. You have 2 different types of costs. You have selling and administrative, which are not driven by volume. In other words, that cost is there, but it's not directly driven by the number of people you serve, the number of products you provide. It's called selling. You go out, you do your marketing, but marketing, if you sell 1 or you sell 100 or you sell 1,000, marketing, and the assumption I'm making here to do this pricing is that the marketing doesn't change. You're not going to say, if I sell 1, then the marketing is 10, and if I sell 2, marketing is 20, and if I sell 3, marketing is 30, and if I sell 100, then the marketing is 1,000. I don't make that assumption. The assumption I'm making is I hired a marketing guy. I'm advertising wherever I'm advertising. That's a set cost. Over here in this area is the administration. You're going to draw a salary. Now, you could do bonuses later on, but you're drawing a salary. But this area here is what's known as product cost. Product cost says this. Every unit I make drives the cost inside my company up. In other words, let's take Cannondale. If you know bicycles, Cannondale makes aluminum bicycles, racing bicycles and stuff like that. If I have cost, if I make 1 bike, I'll need 1 chain. If I make 2 bikes, I need 2 chains. If I make 5 bikes, I need 5 chains. Understand the relationship there. Over here, the more of I serve, the more product I provide, the more cost I'm going to have. These costs don't change. Selling administrative. So we have this model here. We have the difference between fixed and variable costs. So I know some of you have seen this before, so it's a bit of a review. The relationship is this. If I created, and I'm over here down in this lower left-hand corner, and I say this, I'm going to create 2 axes here. Vertical axis is my dollars. Quantity, the more I make, the quantity increases. Here, the dollar is increasing. Can everybody see my pointer? Is it working?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, so the cost this way is going up. The quantity here is going up. So the fixed costs. Now, these are things such as salaries, rent, property tax, insurance. They're going to be fixed. Basically meaning this. Now, let me make this statement. I get up one morning and I say this. I'm not going to go to work today. I'm not going to go to work. I decided I'm just going to keep the business closed. Let me ask you a question. Are you still going to have cost? Yeah. You can't sit there and go, you can call up the insurance company and say, you know what? I didn't open the office. And because I didn't open the office on that day, I'm not paying for insurance on that day. And you can't sit there and does anybody in the room rent?
Yes, they do.
Okay. If you rent like your own house and you say, I go on vacation in the summer, I'm gonna be gone for 2 weeks. I'm gonna call my landlord up and I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna say, Mr. or Mrs. Landlord, I'm not gonna be home for 2 weeks. Don't charge me rent. What's your landlord gonna say?
You owe me money. Something
Yeah,
that
you owe
bad.
me money. You owe me money. That's happening down in this category right here. That is, let's see, I lost there it is. This is the fixed cost. Whatever you do in your company, you're gonna have to cover that fixed cost. The other one is the variable. Remember I told you the example about the mountain bikes and canes, and the more I have, notice there's no variable cost if I have zero quantity. What I'm gonna have to do, so my total cost is a combination of those two types of costs, my fixed and my variable. Looking at some examples here, fixed costs, salaries, leases, insurances, utilities, and if you are a virtual good or services, typically your fixed cost is going to be greater than your variables because you're not really driven by volume that way as a concrete company. With variable costs, product materials, delivery, and stuff like that, that is driven by your volume. Okay. I'm going to keep on going, just timing, but a couple formulas down here in the bottom of a burn rate, what a burn rate is, and how fast you're going through your cash, runway, and cash out of date. I'm going to talk, remind me if Kathy, can you do me a favor?
Yep.
Remind me when we're talking the hockey stick to tell you the Dwayne Clement burn rate story.
Okie doke.
Okay?
Yes.
All right. Okay, give me a second here. Okay, I'm going to give you an assignment. First assignment here. We're going to work through what we've learned so far, and we're going to calculate profit and loss. So what I'm going to ask you to do, and I'm going to work through this with you here. Let's say you have a product known as a royal. The product is called a royal. Now, if you sell 2 royals, and when you're selling those 2 royals, the royals, you sell them for $12 a piece. So your royals, your sales are going to be 24. Again, you sold 2 royals, $12 a piece, your sales are 24. Then your cost of goods sold. Let's say the cost of goods sold on those, which is a direct cost or variable cost, is going to be 6 each. So I sold, remember, 2, and I have $12 a piece selling price, cost of goods sold 6 each, contribution margin is now 12. My overhead and expenses are 11, giving me a profit of 1. Okay, now give you this. So the sales are 12 each, sold 2, giving me 24. Cost of goods sold 6 each, sold 2, cost of goods sold is 12. Contribution margin, now 12, 24 minus 12. My overheads and expenses, which are fixed, are 11, give me a profit or loss of 1. Here's a question for you. We kick up the amount that we sell from 2 to 4. Calculate the profit and loss. Give you a second to calculate that. So the sales, remember now we're selling 4. Selling price is 12. Cost of goods sold is 6 each. Overheads and expenses stay at 11. Go ahead and calculate your profit and loss.
Oh, man. Calculating.
Yeah,
What's our answer?
I got 13.
Absolutely, it is 13.
I did too, Letitia.
Yeah, how did you jump from 1 to 13?
How did
And
I?
I'm just not gonna be able to do this, but in this box right here, sales, what is your new number? It went from 24 to
48.
48, perfect. Cost of goods sold, what's your new cost of goods sold number?
24.
24, giving you a contribution margin of
24.
24. What is your overhead and expenses, which don't change?
11.
Those are 11, which gives you now a profit and loss of 13. Look what happens there. That's why it's so important to understand the difference between variable costs and fixed costs. Because once you now, we're going to go ahead. Let me ask this. Any questions?
Yeah, Joe, in this microcosm, I see that you have a formula up top where indirect cost equals fixed equals overheads. Can you elaborate a little bit exactly what overheads and expenses is in this example or in general?
Yeah. Where you have indirect costs equals fixed costs, which equals overheads.
Sure.
Yeah. Those indirect are, and see, this is one of the key things here. And who's that? Is that Jeremiah?
Yes.
Yeah. Awesome, absolutely awesome question that you just asked. Here's a hint, and it's almost like the worth of, I'm going to put this, worth the price of admission tonight. But golden, absolutely golden in the world of finance, absolutely golden in the venture capital, and absolutely golden is this phrase right here. What do you mean by that? And why I say that is different companies use different terminology for the same thing. In other words, direct cost. You're going to talk to an accountant. An accountant's going to say, well, product cost is direct cost plus indirect cost. And then marketing is going to say, no, that's not the way you do it. How many, I know, G, you have had finance from me. And it was a pleasure having you in class. But if you remember, I made this statement. When you talk to an accountant will call capital stockholders' equity. That's capital. But when you talk to a finance person, capital is stockholders' equity plus long-term debt. I'm in an interesting position. I'm a CPA who teaches finance. So whichever hat I have on at the moment is how I define capital. So when you're looking at this and saying, okay, when I'm coming into my formula here and I'm doing cost of goods sold, the question you're going to be wanting to answer is, when you talk about cost of goods sold, is that direct costs? Is that variable costs? Is it cost of goods sold? What are you calling it? In effect, what I'm saying here in this model is it's the part that changes directly with your volume. Does that help?
Yes.
Yeah, because that's an awesome question. And that gave me an opportunity to delve into that a little bit, because I find, and you're going to find different people. So when you say, like standing in front of venture capital and they go, what are your costs? And you can say, could you elaborate on your question? What type of costs are you considering? How do you want me to classify them? Do you want me to classify them? Because in two different scenarios, your costs are going to be different. In this first case where I sold 2 Royals, my total costs were 12 and 11, which is 23. When I sold 4, my total cost jumped from 23, what is it? 35. And you're gonna say, well, then my costs are driven by my volume. But it's not a direct relationship because there's some fixed and some variable in there. I don't want to get too deep. Does that help?
Yeah, you're basically talking about margins then, the cost to produce versus what you sold it for.
Yeah. So, okay. But that, awesome, thank you for that, and thank you, awesome question. Now, let's go into the break-even point, the break-even. How much do I need to sell to make zero? Like, what in the world kind of question is that? How much do I need to make? How many do I need to sell to make zero? In other words, to have no profit, no loss. Formula is this. You have your fixed costs, and you're going to have this down here, which is selling price minus variable cost. I'm going to walk through a formula with you here. Now, remember, I said this about the fixed cost. The fixed costs are going to be there regardless of what you do. Remember, I had the example of rent. You call your landlord and say, I'm not going to be there. And they go, tough. You're still going to pay rent. So you have to come up with rent costs. If I say this, I'm not going to be at my house. I'm going to go away for a month, like summer, and I don't want to pay any utility bill. I don't want to pay a sewer bill. I don't want to pay a water bill. I don't want to do anything like that. And the utility company says, tough, there's a cost of just being hooked up to the system. You're going to have some on usage, but there's a base fee. That's what's called the fixed cost. So you have to come up with inside your company the way to cover your fixed costs. So let's go an example here. You have fixed costs of $10,000. $10,000. Can't get away from it. Rent is in there, insurance is in there, property tax is in there, salaries are in there, can't get away from them. Fixed costs. You sell for 80, it costs you 30 in variable. Go ahead and calculate this for me, the break-even point. What is the break-even point? And then I'm going to show you this. Go ahead and calculate the break-even point.
The 500?
No.
50?
Remember, you have to cover $10,000, and each unit that you sell makes $50 for you.
Oh, I see what you're asking.
Shout out the answer.
200?
So how many do I have to sell?
200?
Absolutely, there it is, 200. $10,000 I need to cover. Each one I sell for $80, and it costs me $30 of variable costs. So I have to sell just 200. I have to sell 200 just to say I made zero bottom line. Because outside of that, if you sell any less, now here's the question. Let me ask you a question.
I do.
Sarah has a question. How do you account for time?
What's that?
How do you account for time? Is that you do it over, because every month you spend a certain amount, so and when you're trying to, oh, look at me, look at Joe. I don't know how to ask my question, but
Time.
Okay.
Are these the costs for
within a
for
certain
a
amount of
month, or is it per month? Yeah, that's, or is it?
Oh,
Okay.
I see what they're asking. Do you see what they're asking, Joe?
I pulled up my financial projections and I didn't do my break-even point analysis because I got stuck. So I pulled it out and I don't know how to apply the formula to my spreadsheet. I think it would be okay.
Right. Okay. Here's the question. Yeah, Sarah, and an awesome question. And so I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask this. And the question you're asking is a pitfall of a lot of entrepreneurs. Just is. When you talk time, is it your own time or is it time of employees?
So
think that's what we need.
No, I'm thinking of, so I'm looking at my cash flow and I have it by month and by quarter.
Yes.
And I have projections on what's gonna be the top line, and I know my fixed costs and I know my variable costs. But I don't know how to, do I pick a month to calculate the break-even point? Do I do it over a year? I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, oh, no, I understand. You're talking about the period that you're analyzing.
Yes.
Yes and yes. How's that as an answer? The reason you do it at a year, but think about this. I would argue going to a month level because you can be cyclical. In other words, yeah, you're saying, okay, every month my costs can change, especially when you're in Erie. Erie has things like utilities. If you have utilities, you think about in the winter, we plow, we have salt, we have to heat, there's all the different things like that. Erie's interesting in that it costs a different amount to run a company throughout the year. So for that reason, calculate your break even, and good companies do. They break it down to every month and say, okay, here's what my fixed costs are for January. Here's my variable cost for January, and then all through July and stuff like that, or you're running air conditioning, or also you have dynamic. And what I mean by dynamic is you could be sitting at the beginning of a year and you could be calculating fuel costs. We have no idea what, like, you know, with Joe Biden being in office, going to be sworn in end of January, what's going to happen to our cost per gallon of fuel? Is that going to go up during the year? You know, we've been having actually historically very low fuel rates. If you consider what's going on in Europe, Canada, things like that, we pay very low price for fuel, but it can go up. Your cost of your product can go up. Cost of different things that you're providing can all, those can all change. So it needs to be a dynamic number too. Does that help?
It does, thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna go here and I'm gonna switch this over to break-even price. Now I'm gonna go here with this, and I'm gonna do another assignment for you. What we just did in this slide here was break-even volume. That's break-even volume. Now we're gonna go into what's known break-even price. In other words, saying, okay, I'm gonna have my fixed cost. Now look at the problem here. Hasty Rabbit Corporation makes sneakers for quick-footed rabbits, nice, and would like to introduce a new model called Swifty Feet. The corporation accountant has calculated the following costs. Cost of material, 18. That's a variable. Direct labor, 23. That's a variable. Manufacturing supplies, 8. That's variable. Cost per pair of sneakers, 49. Total fixed cost, 375. What would be the break-even price if Hasty Rabbit sold 50,000 pairs of sneakers? So in other words, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this formula here. You see where the fixed cost, 375, put that in as the numerator. Put 50,000 as your production volume. And then your cost per pair of sneakers, 18 plus 23. Plus 8 gives you your 49. So come up with a price for 50,000. What should you charge if you make 50,000 pairs? And I am going to put the answer up on the board here. If you sell 50,000 pairs, to break even, you should charge $56.50.
$56.50.
$56.50. Yep. If you sell 75,000 pairs, you then charge $54. If you sell 100,000, you have $52.75. See, what's happening here is you're spreading your fixed cost, the 375,000, over more and more customers. Because remember, your customers are going to help you cover that fixed cost. In the first example, I asked 50,000 customers to help me cover the 375,000. In the second example, I asked 75,000 customers to help me cover it. And in the last one, I asked 100,000 customers to cover it. I'm spreading the same 375,000 over more and more customers, which then my price can drop. This is actually sometimes a trick question. And what I mean by a trick question is this. I'm going to ask you a question. Can I sell my sneakers for $55 and make money?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's the infamous "it all depends" answer.
On how many people buy it.
Exactly. Exactly. If you sell to 75,000 or 100,000, yes, 55 is a good price. If you don't, and you sell to only 50,000, you're going to lose money.
You lose out.
Yes, exactly.
So Joe, this is Kathy. Could you reverse engineer that formula to say that you want your price to be $55 and then figure out from there through that formula, reverse engineering, how many pairs of sneakers you would have to sell to break even or start to make money, right?
Yes,
That
yes.
price? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. But you'll know, here's, I'm going to say, and Kathy, thank you for that excellent question. Okay. I tell, and G, you were in my finance class, you remember things like this, where look at this formula as break-even price right here, right? Everybody can see the cursor?
Yes.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. There are 4 components to this formula. Break-even price is right here. Fixed cost is a component, variable cost is a component, and production volume. I can basically solve for any one of those if I know the other 3. Okay. What you just asked, Kathy, excellent question. If I knew break-even price and fixed costs and variable costs, could I come up with production volume? Yes. If I knew break-even, how many people I'm selling to, and my fixed costs, could I come up with my variable? Yeah. Could I come up with my fixed if I knew variable and how many people I'm selling to? What I would do there is know what I'm able to absorb as a fixed cost. In other words, saying, what exactly can I afford as rent? What exactly can I afford as salaries for people in my factory? Because the salaries are fixed. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, so in other words, I can reverse engineer this. So excellent questions, excellent questions. Okay.
And Joe, we have almost 7 o'clock, just FYI.
And where do we go? What do we?
7:30?
7:30? Okay. We're picking up speed on this one now because these will fly. This is
Okay.
different. We're going into strategy. I wanted to put the other part with them. So now we're going into different strategies here, okay? As we go into different strategies, and you're going to have this as a spreadsheet, different formulas. And when you're looking at this, there is a flow chart here says, okay, have you analyzed your competition and market? Let me just go through this, and there's this flow chart you can look at later, but I want to talk to you about strategies. First kind is called price skimming. Who does this? These are, now we're getting into how people set their prices. Price skimming, they set the price very high and then they lower it as the market evolves. I was just looking at the other day, back in the early 2000s, Sony was releasing a TV called a plasma TV. It was through Crutchfield, and the plasma TV, get this, the plasma TV for, I think it was like a 48-inch plasma, was $5,500 for a TV. Now, if you go in there today and you say $5,500 and you go up to Best Buy and go, what kind of TV? If you went $5,500 for a higher level quality, you could probably buy in Best Buy $5,500 for an 8-foot screen or something. But Sony back then would do $5,500 for a plasma TV. So they use it. They're coming into the market. They're brand new. They don't have competition. They're pioneers. They can do it. They can make operations inefficient. Why? Because you're not worried about, you're basically not, you're just setting the price so high. You're covering your costs. You're saying, well, our fixed costs are going to be $1 million. Well, just price to cover it. It doesn't make they go like, well, we got to lower it. You're just covering. Apple does the same thing. In fact, Apple will come up and say, okay, if you want to buy an Apple 12 Pro, you're paying more than $1,000 for a phone. Amazing things. Next one, demand pricing. Now, you can see the flow chart. I'm not going to take you through the flow chart. You're going to have the slides. Demand pricing, varying the prices by area and need. In other words, you see this with airlines and you see this with Disney World. Disney World charges different prices for the gate, different times of the year. If you want to get into Disney at Christmas time, guess what? You're not paying off-season prices. Right now, because of COVID, get this. I like to sometimes go down, my brother lives in Florida, I go down and visit him. And to rent a car, if I go down for a few weeks, Christmas time, if I go down, it usually costs me somewhere about $400 to $400 to rent a car for a month, basically a car payment. Right now, if I wanted to rent a car from a car rental for a month, it's $1,600. It's yeah, they're doing demand pricing. They're basically saying, okay, what we're doing is there's the need and we have the cars, we're going to cover our costs. And what they're doing is they're actually saying, okay, there, cost plus. So I'm flying through these here because of time. Cost plus. And I'd be glad to talk to anybody about these more once we go on. So I'm just basically giving you a flavor right now. Cost plus is what Walmart and Wegmans do. What it is they buy their can of soup, they buy their quart of milk, they buy all of the items that are on the shelf, they add just the profit they want to make, and that's how they set their prices. So they basically take the cost, add a profit, and sell it. It builds trust with the customers, because the customer can say, wow, I know this can of soup is costing Walmart and it's costing Wegmans the same. If Walmart and Wegmans are paying the same for the Campbell's chicken noodle soup, I know then how much profit Walmart is making and Wegmans is making. Next, penetration pricing. Penetration pricing was like Netflix, Gillette, Stax. Stax came up, and that's potato chips, that wanted to compete with Pringles. They wanted to go after a market that Pringles had. When Stax came out, you wouldn't believe the price they charged for a Stax tube of chips, 69 cents. What are they doing? They're stealing market share away from Pringles. They came in, they're saying it's penetration pricing. I'm going to drop this. I'm going to go in. So lowering prices to increase the number of customers. Good when there are a lot of customers, and it may attract bargain hunters, but you don't get loyalty. Next one, value pricing. Go across, right across the bottom. If I'm going to sit there and I look at, again, Apple, I go to Starbucks. Starbucks, you go in there and you enjoy your beautiful cup of coffee, and you walk in and it's like you get the what is it, grande with the extra shot. And if I sit there and if I walk into Starbucks and I say this, I was just over at McDonald's, I got a senior black for 55 cents. Can you do that? And what's Starbucks going to say to me? Yeah, right. They're gonna look at me and go like, no, senior. You know, we don't. First of all, don't do senior black coffee. What we do is you're like, okay, you're going to be paying $4.50 for cafe americano. We don't have coffee here. We have coffee, whatever that is. And then you go look at the next one, Louis Vuitton. Louis Vuitton, the same thing. You're going to sit there and say, okay, Louis Vuitton, if I need something there, or the whole diamond industry. You're looking at people saying, how much do I pay for a diamond? Value pricing. What they do is they get inside the customer's head saying, how much does the customer believe it's worth? And competition, competitive pricing. Back to the example of country fair and sheets. Let's say there's a country fair and a sheets across the streets from each other. What's the chance they both have the same price?
100.
Yeah. In fact, if country fair lowers it by 5 cents, guess what sheet's going to do?
Same.
Lower by 5 cents. That's called competitive pricing. So whatever your competition does, Walgreens does it, Rite Aid does it, CVS, you go in, they do the same thing. This is the way they operate. What they do is they go to school on their competition, say, whatever you're doing it, I'm doing the same thing. Okay? Now, for businesses that don't stand out against the competition. Now, what's that mean? With Walgreens, Rite Aid, and CVS, if you need Advil, like you're working on your company and all of a sudden you get this splitting headache and all of a sudden there's someone like, I need some painkillers, and you go, well, there's a Walgreens down the street. No, I don't buy aspirins from Walgreens. I'm only going to go to Rite Aid because I'm a Rite Aid kind of person. No, you're going to walk into a Walgreens or a Rite Aid or a CVS because it doesn't matter. In fact, you'll go to Dollar General for the Advil. So yeah, it's called competitive pricing. Next, tiered pricing. Tiered pricing is different pricing on different types of products. So in other words, you're saying, look at Verizon. Verizon, way back when, had what was known as unlimited data, unlimited everything. And in fact, I was one of their customers on that. It was unlimited. Then they went to tiered pricing and they say, okay, how many people are you gonna have on your plan? What speed do you want? And it's all different pricing. Same thing with DirecTV. If I want DirecTV and then I want 4K ultra high def, it's not your basic plan. It's going to be a higher plan because it's an add-in. It's called tiered pricing. Spotify does it. MailChimp does it. Skype does it. And so what they're doing here is doing different pricing, based on different levels. What do you do here? You're going after value-focused consumers and encourage consumers to spend more. So you're basically getting them in, and then you want them to provide more. If you're a DirecTV, basic DirecTV, I'm going to date myself a little bit here. I'm a basic DirecTV customer. They're going to tell me, but of course you want a 4K ultra high def, and I tell them, no, I don't. It's the same. But but some people are going to go like, oh, of course, I need to have the grass at the Masters to look like grass. Yeah. So, okay. Then 8 types, let's see here. Moving quickly again, freemium pricing. I know, Jeremiah, you were talking a little bit about freemium with my students, right? I get it. We're moving fast because we're covering a lot of stuff. You're like drinking from the fire hose now, because Kathy turns off Zoom at 7:30, and I have only a certain amount of. You're going to hear me talk faster. Man. So there's the traditional model of freemium. What is a traditional? It is basically a fully functional product, free forever, significant feature limitations or rate limits. So you get this product, you can have it forever. Next one is what's known as land and expand. Land expand, you get the users to sign up a product for free. Now, watch what happens here. With a land and expand, you get all these customers to come in, and then you sell the company. You basically sit there and say, I have 100,000 users, and you sell the company because 100,000 users is really cool. You're not looking at saying, I'm going to be making money from every customer. I'm going to make money by selling the company. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, I want to talk later a little bit more about that too, Joe.
Okay. Then there's what's known as unlimited free trial. So this is, yeah, we're doing freemium in this session tonight or whatever. No, but you're good. No, it's all good. Unlimited free trial usually involves feature limited version of the product, and that is mostly unusable. It's like it's like a really handicapped, if I can say that safely, version of the product, which is really saying it's unusable. Now, what's the risk? I have purchased software that's been unlimited free trial. It doesn't work. What's the chance I want the company's product then? I'm like, no, this is garbage. I don't want it. Then there's what's known as freeware 2.0. Free forever, fully functional, monetized through add-ins and power users. For example, Evernote and Skype. So in other words, there is a core product, free forever and fully functional, but you come up and start selling the add-ons. We're moving quick, so we're going to keep on going. Alternative product strategy used by companies that have existing premium product line that want to branch into new areas or division of their core offering. In other words, what they're doing is saying they have, and then they do a freemium to do existing, like add additional lines outside of their main line. There's ecosystem. This is iTunes, Google Play Store, Kindle Reader. What happens here is they make money. iTunes is free. iTunes makes money by you downloading a pay app, and they have to, and the consumer pays for the app, and Apple makes some money. So basically creating the ecosystem that in which the other service, so it's the shell. You create a free shell and allow people to be inside that shell and charge for them to be inside it. So it's monetizing through revenue third-party developers. The network effect, okay? This is where you're saying monetize by collecting data on users, traffic, likes, behavior, stuff like Facebook is famous for this, Mint, Google, because what they're selling is your behavior, data about you. In other words, Facebook knows all this information about tons and tons and tons of people, so it sells knowledge. Then the free tool. The company uses engineering sources to develop free the tool resources provide very basic yet very usable tasks. So it's the free tool. So they're offering these free tools and getting their name out. Moving fast again. I will open some time for questions because I know we're going fast. Are we okay, Kathy?
Yep. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, no, we're cool. We're cool. Got to keep me on. 9 freemium mistakes to avoid. These are ones that you make sure you don't do. First of all, weak value proposition. Think about this. When you go freemium, you're fully preparing and offering a product to the market. The question is, does the market know what it is? In other words, you can provide this. And think about it. You're providing a free service to the market. You're absorbing marketing. You're absorbing engineering. You're absorbing everything. And if they don't know what it is, they're not even going to download it. Okay, poorly defined business model. Okay, we're just going to click here. This one, number 3, pitting free against paid. In other words, you create a really cool freemium product, and then the customers, and then you come to another one, and you develop, and you say, but we're going to have this other product, and it's going to be a paid one, and everybody's walking around going, like, there's no reason for us to go to the paid one. We love the free one. And what you just did is you shot yourself, because you were going to say, well, what we're going to do is we're going to create free and then create this other product, and then nobody wants the other one. Failure to count the cost of a large user base. Think about this, free product, and everybody loves it. You're now having a help desk for a huge user base. You're providing product to a huge user base and you're not charging. So what is the cost of that large user base? Making the free version too good. In other words, again, I don't need to switch away from it. Miscommunicating price changes. And we've seen this in the market where all of a sudden it's like, you know what? I downloaded the product and it was free for a month and now they're charging me. And I don't like the fact that they're charging me. And basically I didn't even know they were going to charge me. And all of a sudden now they're hitting my credit card. And then the credit card rate goes up. And it's like, you're sitting there thinking, what in the world is happening? Remember, you can be building bad PR for your company by doing these. Charging for premium. In other words, you're saying, okay, again, we could, just because of sake of time, we're going to keep on going. And now think about this. They're missing reoccurring revenue opportunities where you're saying, okay, can I offer subscriptions? Now, how many people have seen free apps, but when you go to download it from App Store, they say in-app purchases. You see those?
Yes.
Sometimes what companies do is offer too much of the product for free. And now that the product is in the hands of the consumer, you're saying, can I continue providing information and have them charge for it? You know who's doing this huge right now? How many people remember that when you used to be able to look for news, you could download news from every website, Washington Post, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, and as much as you wanted. And now, and I find this is turning into a pet peeve for me. You have expired your 5 free searches.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and now you're sitting there and saying, okay, now they want me to subscribe to them. And like everybody's moving into that direction simultaneously. Poured roadmap planning, where are you going to go with it? Now, I have this customer, this quote, it says, how do you have 1 million paying customers? Have 1 billion people load your app. Think about it. Wow.
Wow.
Okay. Now, I'm going to skip over the case studies just because we're at 15 minutes now. Pricing models. How do I price? I can do hourly. And where I do hourly pricing, this is the hourly rate times the total number of hours worked. Project-based, where rather than saying the number of hours, me as a CPA, when I bill a company or an individual to do their tax return, I charge by the project, by the tax return. I sometimes add hours in, but it's a flat rate for the complete project. They just pay that price. Also, I have some clients that are on retainer. These are especially for risky ones that come in and they pay ahead. Attorneys are huge on this, where they ask you to pay ahead of time and it's a monthly fee. And then whatever they provide in there, it's a monthly fee. Performance-based, what happens with performance-based is you say, I'm going to help your company get to a certain point, for example, a key performance indicator, and there'll be a fee once you hit that number. And then there's cost plus. Cost plus, so it's cover production cost plus a profit markup. Let's see, I'm just going to show you this quick. The cost plus pricing formula is a direct material plus a direct labor plus allocated overhead times 1 plus the markup. So you're basically, remember what I said about Wegmans and Walmart? That's cost plus. What they're saying is there's a base cost of a can of Campbell's chicken noodle soup, then they just add that markup on top of it. We're going to go quickly here. Okay, how do you calculate or project your total income, net income? And then this was an awesome question. I think, who asked this question? Sarah asked this question, right? Decide on your timeline. The first thing is how far you're going to go in the future and how much detail. Are you going to do by month? Are you going to do by year, by quarter? I always say it this way. These are designed to serve you. In other words, Sarah, if you're looking at break even, do you want to know your break even for over the year? Or do you want to know how much I need to sell each month? You are the driver of that question. And however you answer that question is your answer. Because no one out there is going to come to you and say, your periods are wrong. In other words, this is an internal document for you. Does that help?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah. So you project your expenses, fixed, variable, we talked about, and then project your sales and predict future total sales by period. Now, you're going to ask some questions. Here's what you want to do. You have your customers, which ones and how many. You're basically going to come up with what is known as a persona. In our data analytics class, I'm teaching students how to come up. So if I'm going to be working with you in 625, Jeremiah, I believe we'd like to talk to you about my data analytics class, serving you, coming up with personas of what a typical customer looks like. So your customers, which ones, how many? Remember your Pareto principle. Pareto principle says 20-80, that you're going to get 80% of your revenues from 20% of your customers. Think about that. Your service area, we're in an interesting area in Erie. And the reason Erie is interesting is we have half a market. Why do we have half a market? What is sitting to our north?
Canada.
Oh, going too far.
Buffalo.
The lakes?
Yeah, just some water.
Yeah. So you think about it. If you go to Pittsburgh and you draw a circle around Pittsburgh and you draw a circle around Erie, what is half of the circle?
Most of it's gone. It's water.
Water. So yeah, think about it. You're thinking how is that pricing going to come into play when you look at Pittsburgh and Columbus? Cleveland has the same issue we do. Buffalo has the same issue we do. If you're going to a harbor or a lakefront city, they have issues, and Erie knows this. We just work around it when we do planning. We can say comparable cities. We can go to Scranton and say Scranton's a comparable city to Erie. Not really, because Scranton doesn't have what to their north? A lake. So they have a full circle. Market conditions, business position, and seasonal adjustments. Now, how to calculate, and when you get this PowerPoint, you're going to want to spend a little bit of time on this slide. How to project your total revenues, okay? Now, determine how sales are calculated for your industry. What I mean by that, number one, is remember I went back to hourly, by project, by retainer, premium, whatever. Determine how sales are calculated for your industry. Number two, create a profile of your ideal customer. When I take a look at the ideal customer, it's like, who is the average? And then determine your market share, how much market share you're going to want. Determine how often your customers will buy from you. And what's the average size of that purchase? So in other words, what's the average customer? How many times a year and how much? Then you're going to say the number of customers times the average sales price and number of yearly purchases. Or Sarah, you were talking about by month or by quarter. That is your projected sales. Okay, questions? And I'm going to go a little bit more to give you, but questions.
We have a question from Diana.
Yes.
So, rewinding to the break-even numbers.
Yes.
Ideally, you don't want to break even, but that's like the lowest number to just be steady in the business, correct?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, you don't want to break even. You want to break even, but that's
your starting number. I have to make at least.
That's your starting number. Absolutely. Okay. Something that I was sort of touching on with Sarah, and this is with venture capitalists, they're going to ask you this question. They're going to ask you, have you factored in paying yourself? Oftentimes, entrepreneurs don't factor in their own pay. In other words, they say, well, this is what my costs are going to be. This is how much I'm going to have, and I'm going to cover my fixed costs. but they don't put themselves into the fixed costs. And that's a problem. And if you go to stand in front of a venture capitalist and you're pitching your company, doing a pitch, and they're going to say, have you calculated how to pay yourself? And you say, no, next. Because no entrepreneur is going to say, if you look at the distinguished group we have tonight, and I say, raise your hand if you plan to put all this money, put all your effort into the company and not be compensated. I don't think anybody raised their hand.
No, nobody.
Yeah. But how many people sit there and say, well, are you going to put it yourself as a salary? And they don't do it. That salary needs to become part of the fixed cost. Okay. Now, this is where we're going with data analytics. Kathy, you already saw this, and we saw this for, I'm drawing a blank for a second. In data 625, we served Ty. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm in now. And we're coming up with dashboards here and saying, like 60-day projections, orders to ship, revenues, and being able to track that. Now look at the difference here. This is the traditional view of financial statements, profit and loss by period, comparative income statement, and profit and loss. Where companies are going today, and this in working with Tableau, working with Excel, Power BI, things like that, is creating this document for you so that you run your company with this document. In other words, what's my average invoice amount? Where are the website visits coming from? What do I have as orders to ship? Hot new opportunities. Here's another one. This is a yearly revenue comparison, industry-wide, looking at our competition, where they are. Region-wise, I know it's a little bit small, but I'm just giving you a flavor for where companies are going today, and want to get you interested in looking at dashboards to run your company. Last of all, and quickly here, because I'm down to 5 minutes and being good, this is the hockey stick. And what we mean by the hockey stick is you're tinkering, those stages of growth. This is what venture capitalists want to see. It's called the blade years, the inflection point, what happens here, and surging growth, the revenue. So investors should overlook periods of low revenues here, and they're going up here. But I want to show you something. Now, 2 things to watch for, okay? This is the hockey stick, but think about the adjusted startup curve. What often happens with a startup is there's initial enthusiasm. Oh, this is the most amazing thing that ever happened, until the next amazing thing that ever happened comes along. Then you get a reality check. It's like, whoa, lack of traction. And then you have an opportunity. You have your execution, skills and networking. You have your crash of ineptitude. And then you have now your hockey stick here. Couple things. Be careful not to break your hockey stick. Just like in hockey, if you break your hockey stick, problems. Now, what will break it? Now, here's the things that will break the hockey stick for you. Remember, it's important that you have break due to a misunderstanding of the addressable markets. Who exactly are we selling to? Underdeveloped lead generation process. Who is your pipeline? Where are they coming from? And you have too many hires too soon. You can break your hockey stick. So how do you prevent that from happening? Research, and key here, research total addressable market, and be careful not to rely on your early adopters. What I mean by early adopters, people who are looking around for the latest, greatest thing. How many of you have, you're all, if you're like me, everybody's carrying an iPhone or an Android. How many of you have an app on your phone that you downloaded more than a year or 2 ago and you've never used it? You just haven't cleaned it off your phone. Early adopter. You're walking around going, this is the absolutely coolest thing. Look at how many people are downloading our app. Next thing you know, they're not using it anymore. Also, build and develop a replicable lead generation process. In other words, you can't be building this hockey stick off the same group of customers. This has to be, you're saying, okay, where are our new leads? Who are our new customers? And then you hold off on your hires until systematic approach and a hire profile has been developed. I know the SBDC is doing some nice workshops on HR. So sometimes it looks like this. The miracle happens here. We're growing, then the miracle, and then it just takes off. So I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to finish it up with this distinguished gentleman. And Steve Jobs makes this comment. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that do. So with that, change the world. I believe in you. Thank you.
Awesome. And Joe, I know we have like 30 seconds. You wanted me to remind you about Dwayne Clement and the hockey stick.
Oh, yes. It's going to be a super fast story. It's going to take a little bit longer than 30 seconds, but this is a Dwayne Clement story. Dwayne Clement was he was going through rounds of funding from different venture capitalists. He had one sign saying, so he went around, he was going through different stages, and Brad, you know, there are different stages of funding. In other words, Brad, I think you said you were at a certain amount and then you're going to the next level of funding, correct?
Still in seed and then moving to A really quick.
Yeah. So what they're doing, what he did was this. He went and he found a company that would do the next level of funding for him. But they asked him a question. And the question they asked him is, what is your burn rate and how many days will you survive? He told them what his burn rate was, and he says, I'll survive 90 days. What they did to him was this. They would give him the check. They told him they would give him a check. They asked him, burn rate, days, he said 90. He heard nothing from them for 89 days. On the 90th day, they said, we have the check. Here are our rules for how you're going to run your company. Guess what they just did to him? He burned it all. They were at day 90. They said, here's the check. Here's the conditions. Guess what happened? Guess what his answer was? Okay. They basically asked him his burn rate. He told them. And they came up with a list of stipulations. He had no more cash. Yeah, that was Clement's to me. He told me that, and he said, there's nothing you can do. It's a feeling, because he was calling them, says, can you send the check? Can you send the check? They weren't even answering the phone calls. Day 90, they answered the phone call and said, here's the conditions, and here's the conditions, you agree to them, and here's your check.
Wow.
Yeah.
Any questions for Joe? Brad, please.
Two highlights that I think are outstanding in Joe's presentation that I thought would be almost necessary to come back to and stress. One, I'll just start because it was recent, the hockey stick. There's an Erie resident that lives in Atlanta that I was talking to that has exited 5 times, very successful. And he said the biggest problem with the culture in startups now, and those are great slides that Joe had, the hockey stick is almost a red herring. They can't wait to scale to a fault. They can't wait to blow up and just go after the market and it crashes the company. The culture and the ability to handle that scale is something they don't plan for, so the hockey stick breaks. That was a perfect example of the breaking hockey stick. I had it validated by an Erie person who's killing it in Atlanta, and he said, if you don't focus on solving the problem, you're gonna break if you try to scale with the hockey stick. You've got to stay true to solving the problem. and everything else takes care of itself, even if you are in the hockey stick phase, but you got to focus first on solving the problem. Very, very good advice. It was a great display there, Joe. Got to highlight that. The other one was the earlier country fair example that you shared. You have to come up with some crutches along the way to develop your pricing. And I love how with a private customer, he reverse engineered how their business model worked, because it's so hard to get that information. A different term I would put to it is a competitor profile is one way to develop your pricing, is to figure out your customer to an extensive detail. That was really good advice, because that's one crutch to build your pricing. It's a beautiful approach, a great example. I mean, another way to do it is to set your goals and try to meet it. That's very difficult to do. But sometimes you meet your revenues by just setting the goals in a pro forma and then try to meet them. But that's really inaccurate. But really studying your competitors, like the example Joe gave with the country fair, is really a smart move. A competitor profile is a very, very smart approach to setting up your financials. So something to just highlight.
And building off what Brad said, and just as a reminder, one of the challenges people find is they're sitting there going like, well, they don't have public financial statements, but you basically, in going to school on your competition, you have the same cost structure. So you think about country fair and Sheets, they're the same cost structure. They both buy fuel, they both buy supplies. They both have to plow their driveways in the winter. It's like they're two different companies. So you're saying, I can recreate. He would actually do that. He was a master of working, outsmarting his competition. He would be at events with people from Sheets, and he would tell them, he would say, when your financials for the second quarter come up, this number is going to be up on your reports. And they were like, how do you know that? And he just, common sense, but he would give them numbers from their own financials.
Thank you, Joe.
Any other questions? All right, Letitia, Ken, thank you so much. It was awesome to see you. We will see you next week. Joe, thank you, thank you, thank you. What a great class. Really appreciate your time that you took for us. And as a reminder, Joe's going to send me the PowerPoint, and I will send that out to you. So Joe, if I hand out, I already emailed to Letitia and Ken, if I hand out the two pricing scenarios, is that something that everyone could just do as kind of practice? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was a pleasure.
Right,
it was a pleasure.
Nope, it was great.
I have one question.
Yes.
Did you give a handout earlier to class in person?
No, I'm remote, so I don't know if Kathy did.
Okay.
So, but we will be sending them out.
Yeah. So I sent you, Ken, via email, because we were going to do a breakout session with pricing strategy activities 1 and 2.
Right.
But we didn't get to that. And then I will be sending out PowerPoint presentation to everyone, because no one even here got it, as well as some articles that I had found.
Okay. Thank you.
You are so welcome, sir. Anything else? All right, with that, thank you so much. Next week, same bad time, same bad channel. We are going to be learning about how to think about human resources and management, how to build your company with people besides just you. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop the recording now.